Hello and welcome to the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, District 5810. I'm Greg Tepper, sitting across the table from me, speaking into a microphone, looking very well coiffed, although you can't tell that because this is an audio medium. The man they call Josey, Andrew Utz.
Well, hello, Greg.
Did anybody ever call you Andy or Drew?
Drew was popular. I'm not a big fan of Andy because I feel like I feel 12 whenever somebody says, "Hey, Andy."
You know what I think of when I think of Andy is the kid from Toy Story.
I was going to say Toy Story.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
Which nothing wrong with Toy Story.
No.
Toy Story's great.
Good movie. Good movie. Do you know that I was looking this up? So Tom Hanks has been in a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 highest rated movies he's been in on Rotten Tomatoes are the 4 Toy Story movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man,
think about that. Like higher than like Castaway, higher than like Apollo 13. Like higher than Big.
Ooh, Big was a good one.
Higher than, I'm trying to think of like his worst movie. Splash? He was in Splash, right? Did I get that right?
I don't know.
There's no way to tell.
No.
The internet doesn't exist, so nobody's going to call me on that. It's great.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Toy Story 3 wasn't that great.
Ooh, shots fired at Pixar. This is the official podcast of Camp RYLA. I almost said the official RYLAcast, which is true. It's the official podcast of Camp RYLA District 5810, and this is your camp post-game show.
Ooh,
this is going to be
yes.
the first podcast that comes out after camp went and happened.
A lot of things happened.
Yeah, can you believe it?
I cannot believe all the things.
You know, here are the things that I can't. Here are the things that stand out to me about camp.
Okay.
The campers, of course.
Of course.
The staff.
Mm-hmm. Great staff.
I thought that the food was adjective.
Yes.
And this can just be a Mad Lib. And I can't believe that we verb at the place.
And the temperature was...
Oh, and the weather.
So...
Can you believe the weather happened that way? Oh,
that's...
Jeez. Jeez. And remember that one kid?
Oh, man.
That one kid.
How could you forget that one kid?
I can't believe what he or she did. Okay, so this is the RYLAcast. Coming up in just a little bit, we're going to be joined by our very special guest. And I mean very special guest.
Yes.
Like, we worked... Look, I don't want to pull back the curtain too much, but we have an entire booking department of people who are constantly trying to book guests for this podcast. That's why we get such great guests. Mm-hmm. Is the booking department works very, very hard. Thanks to Angela and to Dieter for all of their hard work. And this has been somebody we've been trying to get for, I would say, since the beginning of the podcast.
Even before the beginning.
I would say before podcasts even existed.
Definitely.
But we finally got her. We're excited. We're going to be joined by Leah Weintrub coming up in the middle of this podcast. So yes. You do not want to miss that.
Stay tuned.
But Leah was tasked with choosing a word that will be our theme for this episode, and she chose, as you will hear in our interview, because spoiler alert, we already did the interview. She chose about 100 different words. Which, honestly, I love Leah. That's very Leah.
Yes, very on
brand. Be
brand.
like, can I pick like 6 words? And I said, boy, going to be a lot better if you chose less than 2. But she ended up choosing the word fearlessness. I think she chose the word fearless, but I'm going to extrapolate that into a noun, fearlessness, from an adjective into a noun. And so, herewith... something to think about on the topic of fearlessness. It's America's favorite co-host of this podcast, Andrew Utz.
Well, thank you, Greg. Yes, fearlessness. So I listened to an Invisibilia episode. That show came highly rated from previous guests. And this one I was listening to was called Fearlessness, or something like that. And they talked about an individual that is truly fearless. Their whole question was, what happens if we can make fear disappear from a biological standpoint? And they talked to this individual who has a disease that calcifies her amygdala in the brain.
I'm going to need you to say all those words again.
Right. So, and I'm not a doctor, but...
That's for the fans to decide.
So there's the amygdala is the part of the brain that's the fear receptor, and this disease puts calcium deposits. I'm sure everybody's just yelling in their car right now. Calcium deposits on the amygdala, and it made her fearless. Like, she did not know racing heartbeat, no crazy anxiety associated with what we know of as fear. Mm-hmm. So much so that if she was encountered with a dangerous situation, it did not alter her reaction.
Right.
And I thought about that. A, that would be crazy.
That's nuts.
B, I would be okay with not being afraid of bugs. Just
can I tell you a very quick story?
Always.
About bugs? Yesterday, I get home, and my wife says, "Hey, dummy, there's a wasp in the house."
Ooh.
And I go, "Don't you worry, Toots. I'll take care of this." None of this is true. But she did tell me there's a wasp in the house. And so I went and I got some Raid. Mm-hmm. And I found the bug. And this was a huge bug. Okay. This is a mammoth bug. Okay. Have you ever seen Starship Troopers?
Yes.
It's one of those bugs.
Okay.
Huge. Okay. I take the Raid. I pointed at it. And then I whispered to it, "See you in hell, bug." Bang! One shot.
Nice.
Yeah, got it.
Nice.
Anyway, that's a tale of heroism.
So you were fearless.
I was fearless about this. And by fearless, I mean I might have run away screaming once or twice when I discovered it. But go on.
Well, and I guess so. We're getting to that point. But life. The host was talking about a life without fear, and without fear, trauma is not traumatizing, which was interesting. But makes sense. If you don't feel fear, you're not traumatized by anything that a normal amygdala person would be feeling. And it got me thinking about to be fearless, which obviously led me to listen to Taylor Swift's album Fearless from a couple years ago.
The podcast is canceled. This is the last episode of the podcast.
We're just taking
Go on.
We're going down Lombard Street. Just bang, 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 bang.
Lombard Street reference. Okay.
And I thought about all the times in my life that I succumbed to fear. And I didn't do that thing, didn't face that challenge because, hey, I'll probably just, it won't work out anyway. I tell myself in certain situations that things won't work out to avoid the shame and heartbreak of failure. Mm-hmm. And so then the podcast talks to someone who identifies rejection therapy, and they have a fear of rejection. And so to get over that rejection, they seek out experiences that lead to rejection to numb them to that.
So it's like I like the idea of being like, I'm going to apply for jobs that I am almost certainly not going to get.
Right.
Yeah.
But even like from a face-to-face point of view, he went up to someone in the parking lot of a grocery store and said, "Hey, can you give me a ride to a town 30 minutes away?"
Oh, yeah.
And the guy was like, No,
I can't, stranger.
Right, which is probably the appropriate answer.
That is the appropriate answer.
But yeah, I know I'm going all off the rails.
I'm really interested in this.
But yeah, the idea that fear is not going away, save for a degenerative disease that affects a minimal number of Americans.
Right.
And I know Leah has a lot of good points about this.
And fear, it's important to remember that fear is kind of a it's an inherent thing in humans because it's ultimately a safety thing. It's something that we evolved to have.
Right, exactly.
That, we evolved to have this because if you were not afraid of a tiger who was about to run up and eat your face off, you'd just be like, "Oh, hey, cool, look, a tiger." Yeah. Oh my gosh, my face.
I'd be faceless.
You'd be faceless. And we don't want to lose that moneymaker.
Well, thank you.
So that is, it's important to remember that, fearlessness does not necessarily mean that you have to put aside all fears.
Right.
But I do think that especially as it relates to leadership, it has to be willing to take that leap. It has to be willing to that at moments when you need to be fearless, you need to have that ability to be like, nope, I'm going to put aside these things, and it may not necessarily work out for me, but I'm willing to live with the consequences. Well, be afraid of tigers. Is what I'm saying. And
on that note, I will give you something to think about. That fear, think of an equation. Fear is thinking and time. If you take one of those away, then you can fight the fear.
Boy, that's so true.
So,
how many times do you just sit in like how many times do you get faced with a situation, and if you have to make a snap decision, you just don't have time to fear it. But at the same time, if you have all the time in the world to think about it, all you're going to do is start dreading it.
Oh yeah, 110% of my time.
Yeah, that's wild.
So that's something to think about.
Good job, Josey. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
All right, let's get to our big special guest. Leah Weintrub joins us next on the RYLACast. Stay with us. Oh, Josey.
Oh, Greg.
I was thinking maybe we could talk to another person instead of just yammering on you and I on the award-winning RYLACast. One day you do have to tell me what award we won.
That is a fantastic idea, and I think I'm more of speaking the award into existence.
Oh, okay. You put it in the universe.
And put it in the universe, and like every time somebody says the RYLACast, I say award-winning.
Oh, I like
Then everybody knows, oh yeah, the award-winning, but nobody ever really looks back at the awards.
Let's bring in our award-winning guest. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Leah Weintrub. Yay!
This is so great.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. How are things?
They're good. This is my dream come true. Love to talk. Love to talk about myself.
Yeah, this is all the things you...
And RYLA, so pretty much...
Like, one of those things is true, though.
Yeah.
Like...
Which one?
Well, I don't really know. That's fine. Okay, so we start all of these interviews the same way. We're going to ask you to tell us your RYLA story. So, Leah, tell us your RYLA story.
Okay, so I was a camper in 2009. So the campers will officially be 10 years younger than me this year, which feels real good. But I still look the same age as them, so I'm doing great. I went to Plano Senior High School, and I knew nothing about RYLA. So I feel like there's a lot of people who have heard about it from a friend, or it's been hyped up to them. And I think I was nominated by a teacher or a dean, and was into anything and every activity I could possibly get my hands on. So I loved it. I drank the Kool-Aid of everything. So I applied. I got picked. I remember my interview. I remember sitting there and ended up going to camp. And I was one of those people who just followed the packing list exactly. So I did exactly what it said on there, and I did not bring any extra clothes.
Oh no!
Oh my goodness.
Like talent show night. Nope, no. My cabin had to dress me in the leftover clothes of everybody else. So I was very, very liberal.
Can I ask a very personal question? Were you the one who brought fishing equipment?
No,
because fishing equipment is on the RYLA brochure.
No,
that was the one thing you didn't bring?
No.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to
maybe
make sure.
this year. Yeah, make it happen.
Did you bring snacks, though?
I did bring snacks. I think my mom went all out for that one.
Good.
But yeah, and so in my cabin, I remember making a best friend right off the bat. This girl named Callie, and she was amazing. And I am an extrovert, and love to talk, love to volunteer to go first, love to be the center of attention. So my leadership style has always been an outward-facing leadership style. Will run for office of everything I do or things like that. And so what my greatest learning from camp was, outside of all of the different areas of the Dallas community that I had never heard of, was definitely taking a back seat and the idea of servant leadership, and that it wasn't about what I individually got out of something. It wasn't about my own personal success. It was about the success of the team, and that I would play whatever role I had to accomplish that, even if it meant a less visible or less vocal role, which I think was something I'd never really internalized until then. And it's something I constantly think about every day at work in all things I do, of what role can I play, what can I do, and that I don't always have to be the loudest person in the room. And so that was my camper year. It was dream camper year. Like, I just think I had the most perfect experience, and had a great cabin. And then I came back as an AC the next year, and came back the next 3 years on staff, I think. And then I missed camp for a few years. I lived in London for a few years and wasn't able to make it back. And then I came back in 2017 as a counselor. So I missed all the fun staff years that I was going to get in college, and got thrown right into the cabin. And I just remember the very first moment, my first year back in the cabin being a counselor, and watching my campers sit around and like have that moment where they're sitting in the circle for the first time, they're getting to know each other, someone makes a joke, it breaks the ice, they all laugh, and like they're becoming friends. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, like I specifically remember this moment for me, the girl who said the funny thing, laughing, feeling like we're becoming friends. And I just was like, man, like this is where I belong. I'm back where the magic happens. Like, I would do anything to give to these girls what was given to me. And like I because I'd missed camp for a few years, I was like, I will clean the toilets if I have to. Which, Greg, you know about.
We're having fun on the podcast.
Forced laughter.
But yeah, and so this will be my third year in a cabin, and I really do. I think about it all year long. I really think about the things I didn't do well the previous year. So my first year, I think I was a little in my comfort zone and didn't push out of it as fully as I should have, and really just smothered and embraced those girls with everything I had.
Even as a counselor.
Yeah, that first time. Like you hold, like you have things you're nervous about, or like you're not totally sure what's the right way to kind of push them. And so I would think about that all year long, and that was really the big thing I wanted to work on year 2. And so it's it stays in the back of my mind all year long of like, what do I want to do different this year? Like, what am I so excited for? Like, I had the best cabin last year. They just had such a fun time. It was like a joyful environment. Like, that's how every day felt. Like, I had the most fun at camp this last year as I'd had since I was a camper. It was just like pure summer camp fun, and it really reinforced for me that like this is a tough week for those campers, and they learn so much and push through so much, but it doesn't have to, the environment around them doesn't have to be like adversity for you to grow. That we can also grow in an environment that feels safe and happy and joyful. And that was just like, I think just so wonderful. They just like, it was a cabin of love. Oh, it was a really good one.
It's a lot to unpack.
I'm sorry.
No, in a good way. Yeah. In a good, like, when we ask these people, our guests, these people, this award-winning podcast, for 10
years.
What's your RYLA story? It's very, I feel like it's very concise and just.
Not a word that's used to describe me often.
But just like, I went to camp, I came back to camp, and now I'm here. And you have this like a spine running through, starting at your camp experience to now.
Yeah.
So speaking of now, what do you do?
Yeah, so I have worked at Capital One for the last 5 years, half a decade now, and I was an analyst for a long time, and worked in our credit card business. I worked on underwriting, competitive intelligence, digital marketing, a bunch of different things like that. And then for the last 2.5 years, I ran our website. So I led like a UX UI design team, did A/B testing, and then I built machine learning models for the site. It's a thing called like optimization and improving your acquisitions business, things like that. Things that everyone loves.
I just want to say, as a Capital One card holder, it's an excellent website.
Which card?
Venture.
Oh, good card.
Venture card. Thank you. Okay.
I got a Venture too.
Good. All right. That always makes me feel happy. It's like when we had Shelby in here earlier. We of course had a bunch of questions about being a flight attendant. Mine was like, can I like have the whole can of ginger ale?
I always ask for it.
Yeah. See, that's a power move. You got to
be fearless.
Yeah. So it's very nice to hear that that I have chosen a good credit card from somebody who would know better.
Yeah.
And so you.
I'll tell you what I do now.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
I just started a new job in January.
Gasp.
I'm a chief of staff now at Capital One, so I work for an executive now, and so that's my new job.
Oh wow, chief of staff. Wow,
That sounds so official.
It does sound official.
I know, right?
So then, how
Not
would
really.
you say that the stuff that you learned at camp, the RYLA message, how do you feel like you use that in your everyday life as a human, as an adult, and as a professional?
I think about RYLA almost every day at work, and it shows up primarily in two ways. As you, right, like so much of work and being an adult is your relationships with people in your office and kind of how you all get along. We are a company that has meetings most of the day, so everything is done in meetings. And I constantly think that if every person in my company had gone to RYLA at 17, the leadership skills you learn and just the sense of how to accomplish something as a group would take like every business so far. It's why I always think like I wish every kid got to do this, because you know you have so much of the thing that happens at work of like this person wants the credit for it and this person wants everyone to know it's their idea and they want to be like the big boss in the meeting, and I just feel like we waste so much time on kind of egos and all this other stuff, and it's kind of like if we just everybody kind of had that training and let one person be the chief and everyone and play the role they needed to play, I think things would happen a lot faster.
Said the chief of staff.
Well,
If everyone would just listen to me, chief of staff Leah.
no. Well, see, it's an interesting job because it's actually a backseat, and it's really taught me how much I like to play in the backseat and behind the scenes. There's like. You kind of don't have the pressure on you, but you get to do so much, and you get to do it in service of somebody else whose gratitude like means a lot to me. But like when I know that I've done something to make her be prepared or to make her life or job easier, it feeds like my motivation and my need to like be doing and serving others, be doing good for others. And the other big one is just the idea of servant leadership. Like I notice it now is that the people I love the most at work are the people who are reliable and dependable, who their ego comes last and getting the job done comes first. Like it may not be my job description, but I will always clean up the meeting room before the next one. If we have an ideation session and there's a bunch of supplies, like I'll pick it up, I'll put it away. Like I'm not above that. Like and I love the people like that who are just so internally motivated to do whatever they need to in service of like the greater good and the goal. And so the older I get, the more I notice how rare it is, which is kind of sad, but it's just like the most valuable little gem in the world. And like once I find those people, I'm like, you're one of my people. I love you.
So Chief Leah, if I may.
Oh, love it. Yeah. Let's first bring that on.
So we've come to the part of the podcast where if you are familiar with how this works, we invite our guests to plug something, whether it's a TV show, TV channel, credit card to put in their wallet if they have a question about
sometimes I don't know the contents of my wallet.
Yes.
And so sometimes there's an answer that I haven't been told.
Right.
Maybe by, I don't know, a guy from Pulp Fiction.
Right.
I don't know.
Just spitballing
Yeah.
here. So,
Do you know Samuel L. Jackson is 70 years old?
There is no way that's
What?
true.
And he was a pallbearer at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral. He's incredible. That man has seen and done it all.
I feel like this is...
Okay,
this is
this is the plug.
Yeah.
No, we do want to open the floor for you to plug something if you'd be so inclined.
Sure. I mean, Capital One cards, great products. But no.
You don't have to plug.
I love working for a founder-led, mission-oriented company. I think that's really important. But I think financial education is super important. It's one of the things I'm most passionate about. And serving underserved like communities that have really hard access to credit or whatever they need for their finances. There's so many basics that like I think knowing about credit should be a fundamental pillar of adulthood, the way like knowing you should go to college or you're going to get married one day or things like that. So if you have questions about your finances, just let me know. I am really passionate about teaching people about them. I did not expect to plug this.
Can I ask you? Okay, this. I'm genuinely curious.
Oh, gosh.
Do you carry cash?
Well, my dad gave me a 20 this morning, so that's the first cash that I have had in at least a year.
Okay, so you are almost entirely cashless.
Yeah, I mean, unless I like, it used to be for like markets or like a food truck or something, but now they all
take the swipe, the square or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, last thing. We asked you to pick a word.
Yes.
And the word you chose was fearless. Explain.
Yes. So, as you saw, I had a hard time picking just one word.
Yeah, you sent me like 7.
Yes. Well,
and you're like, I like all these. Can I do all these? Like, that's not how this podcast works, Leah.
If you combine them all into one word.
But yeah, so I had to narrow it down. But I ended up picking fearless because I think a lot of leadership and a lot of self-confidence comes down to being fearless. And it's something that I have thought a lot about myself, is that I don't let fear hold me back from like any opportunity I want in front of me, or a place I want to travel to, or a job I want, or something I want to do. Like, it's never been my nature to kind of let that hold me back. And I see it, especially at camp, in so many of the girls in my cabin. Just like a fear or an insecurity or something that it is that keeps them from just like being their best self or being less self-conscious. And we don't talk about it that much at camp, but I think like it's this idea that it is inherent for some people, and that is so lucky and awesome. But like, I like to teach it to my campers of like, this is a safe place for you to try out being fearless. Like, dance really goofy, sing really loud, cheer really excessively. Like, no one here is looking at you like and going to make fun of you. Like, this is a place like that is cool, and you will find that like being that fearless and being your full self in your full life and like as an adult is just going to serve you so much better. And so I'm really into it. I try to be as fearless as I can, both like doing, like, I've jumped out of a plane before. I probably wouldn't do it again, but
okay. Yeah, I was going to,
I got through it.
You're like, check.
Yeah. But also just things like moving abroad or like moving really far away. Like, people will say something like, oh, weren't you scared to do that? And it didn't even cross my mind. And I just think it has made life bigger for me. And so my hope is that it helps people just break out of something that's holding them back.
Well, Leah, this has been wonderful. Thank you for being our guest on the award-winning RYLAcast.
Yes.
We
Thanks
really
for making my dream come true.
That's not true.
I've never been on a podcast, and I love to talk. So dreams
well,
come true.
Guess what? Everyone in RYLA has been trying to muscle me out of this podcast anyway, so we're looking for a host. I mean, so maybe.
I am moving back here.
Hey!
You've been featured, not only like on a podcast, you're the featured.
Yeah, I mean, this episode's going to be named after you.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So things are...
Because I'm a chief.
We're on...
Ladies and gentlemen, Leah Weintrub, yay! And our thanks once again to our very special guest, Leah Weintrub, joining us here on the RYLAcast. This is, I mean, I got to tell you, I think that the ratings for this podcast are going to go up because, like, if we advertise this right and we just say, hey, we got Leah, then I think things are going to go through the roof.
Coast to coast.
Yeah, it's great. So we appreciate her time sitting with us. And can you believe that she was at camp?
No. Well, yes.
Yes.
But the things she did at camp were just...
The sleeping?
Unbelievable.
And the walking?
The leading?
Yeah. I really, really hope that like everything goes really normally for her now, because otherwise people are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, you didn't hear? She got taken away in a hot air balloon." It's like, oh my gosh,
which would be unbelievable.
That would be quite literally unbelievable. Anyway, appreciate Leah Weintrub for her time. And now it's my responsibility to give you something to leave you with. Okay, so fearlessness. I'm going to. We're in the trust tree, right? With the nest, we're in the trust zone.
It's just us.
All right. I think this is a fear that a lot of people have that nobody really wants to admit that they have.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the idea of imposter syndrome?
Oh, I guess for the sake of podcast, no, Greg.
Yes.
I'm not.
Okay. So imposter syndrome is. And I think syndrome, I think syndrome's too strong a word, but what it is the idea that you believe that deep down in your heart of hearts that you're a fraud.
Yes.
And that people are going to find out about it. That like you're not actually like everyone's just, or the idea that like everyone's just being nice to you and that you're not actually like they don't actually like you. Things like that.
Okay.
There's a few different kind of elements to that. But that is something that I think from a leadership perspective can be straight up crippling.
Yes.
Okay? I know that like in my line of work, that was something I had to get over quickly because the idea that like, oh my gosh, I don't actually know what I'm doing, especially like early on in a position like that you don't actually know what you're doing and that people are going to find out and be like, hey, I don't think Tepper actually knows what he's doing. For example, I don't know, hosting a podcast about an organization that you volunteer with.
Right.
That is, I think that can be straight up crippling for people. But there's no real way, and I think that there's a lot of people who think like this. There's a lot of people who think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get found out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't actually know what I'm doing. First of all, somebody told me this once, that nobody actually knows what they're doing, that we're all just kind of faking it, faking our way through life. That was honestly comforting to me for a long time. But the other thing to me is that kind of goes back to the idea of having confidence in yourself and having an ability to understand who you are, what you're good at. But I think most importantly is I feel like one of the things that helped me kind of get over that portion, I still struggle with it sometimes, but one of the things that happened with it is there's a certain level of humility that you have to be willing to ask questions, say, I don't know what this is about. And because I do think that, especially in positions of leadership, where like we think, oh, I'm expected to know everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I've got to go out there and fake it or whatever, things like that. I think that having that kind of humility will help you get over that. And I think that's something that like I realized that asking questions and relying on other people, just because, relying on other people does not make you any less of a leader. If anything, it makes you more of a leader because you're trying to gather information from a greater number of people. But the imposter syndrome thing is something that I read about that like 2 years ago, like popped across my Twitter, and I go, oh my God, that's it. That's the one. That's that feeling in my guts.
Yep.
I don't know. So if you are struggling with imposter syndrome and you think that you're a fraud, that people are going to find out about it, you can take over this podcast because,
write us, tweet us.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Email us. Well, and on that note, to cut you off,
please do.
When someone says, I don't think Greg knows what he's doing, and then
Which
you
is
would
said
respond something like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Everybody's like, haha, Greg's so funny.
Oh, that's the thing. That's like people who think that I'm funny, 100% a defense mechanism.
Well, I think Greg's funny.
Right. Do you know why? Defense mechanism. Shield. Because you don't want to make fun of the funny guy, right?
That's right.
I mean? Anyway, that's something. Imposter syndrome. Read up on it. That is going to do it for us. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. Please tell a friend, rate and subscribe this, and please tell a friend. And here with an antiquated way of telling people how to subscribe to this podcast is Josey.
Yes, writing in chalk while you're trick-or-treating in a neighborhood 3 neighborhoods away from your own.
Oh, that's where they have the big candy bars, full size.
Oh, yeah, king size.
Why are we doing this in July? Or
Well,
August,
it'll come out.
August.
Yeah.
But then we're still too much.
You gotta
anyway,
prep.
Thanks to Leah Weintrub for being our very special guest. And Josey, thanks for your courage.
Thanks, Greg.
We'll see you next time on the RYLACast.